Hi everybody, welcome back to True to Form. Sam Turner back with you with my appraisal of the Cheltenham Festival 2025. Well, 28 races, the amount of drama was just ridiculous. Some scintillating performances, some very emotional victories as well. It was a week that had it all really, thrills, spills and one or two heartaches. We managed to find some winners on the podcast, which was encouraging. We also found plenty of losers as well, so we'll take you through all those races one by one, all 28 of them, sprinkle a little bit of race IQ data onto those and see where we come out at the end of it. Hopefully we'll find some winners for Aintree in 2 or 3 weeks' time, and also going forward as the rest of the season progresses. I thought there were some real notable performances. No doubt you've got your eye catchers yourself, and hopefully I'll just add one or two to that list that you've made from watching all 28 races. I'm bleary-eyed. I've watched them all back again today, and fingers crossed we can pinpoint some winners going forward. So strap yourselves in, here comes day one. So let's go through day one chronologically then, starting off with the Michael O'Sullivan Supreme Novices Hurdle, won in great style by Kopek de Boord. Now, he might not have won by the wide margin that he managed to do at Leopardstown. I think the reason for that was the fact that Work Ahead was in the race and went the, well, mother and almighty gallop in the first stages of that Supreme Novices Hurdle. 34 miles an hour, Rachel Blackmore was clocked out on Work Ahead. He was free, he was keen, and he took the field along at an unrelenting pace. Certainly that first circuit, they were absolutely flying. 2:55.35 for the first 12 furlongs of that race. The champion hurdle was 2:57.13. So just to show you, they were a lot quicker on that first circuit than the champion hurdle. A lot quicker as well than the Fred Winter. So it was an incredible performance really by Kopek de Boord to keep up that gallop and also put good lengths between himself and William Money and Romeo Couleurs. Now Romeo Couleurs, anti-post selection on this pod, ran really well. He chased that strong pace by Work Ahead, took over at the top of the hill and was just a little bit softened up and couldn't quite resist William Money and Kopek de Boord in the closing stages. William Money decided to have one crack. His rider decided to have one crack at Kopek de Boord and it nearly paid off. Kopek de Boord fluffed the last and nearly left the door ajar for William Money, who ran an absolute blinder, came home in a strong figure as well, 56.53 for that closing sectional. Quicker, in fact, than Kopek de Boord, who was 56.69. So really good performances from the first three home. I thought Tutti Quanti as well ran really well, was tailed off at the top of the hill and has finished about 25 lengths behind in sixth. He'll make a lovely novice chaser. I love the way he flicks over his hurdles. If he can translate that form to fences, he's going to be a really interesting horse. So the drama came in the Arkle chase, which was won by Django By, a horse that we were quite positive of last week. Majborough unfortunately blotted his copybook by a scruffy round of jumping, which didn't really leave him with much in the tank once he made that error 2 out. But Django By, quite an extraordinary performance really, almost like Champ. It was Champ revisited, reprised by Nico de Boinville this time on Django By, who was obviously substituting for Sergino and proved a more than able substitute despite a rather scruffy round of jumping himself really. A bit disappointed with him there, but didn't he come home? Load of Sud curled up a little bit after the last. Wasn't a great effort from him in finishing, and he left himself susceptible and vulnerable to a closer like Django By, who really did finish strongly and pinch the Arkle. Mertown, well, one of the most exhilarating jumping performances of the week, I think, in a week where we saw quite a lot of standing starts and quite a lot of horses that didn't jump particularly well. Quite a long list as well of well-fancied horses like Ballyburn, John Bon, Majborough, etc. But Mertown, almost like Caldwell Potter later in the week, absolutely exhilarating, electric at his fences. I think he managed to achieve 7.3 on the jump index rating. I thought he jumped better than that, to be honest. It's interesting what the data shows you sometimes, but he was absolutely electric, and the way that he came clear after the last, for connections who didn't even want to run him in the race really, I think it was very much owner pressure why Mertown went for that race. He was off 127, he was absolutely thrown in, but he had turned himself over at Windsor, and that was a little bit of a concern. Again, the standing start, it certainly did for Grandeur Dam. I think he would have been much better in the 2.5 mile himself. He didn't look as though he got home, but he ran well to a point and he's probably going to keep an eye on. And the Short Go was a very interesting runner, I thought, from the de Bromhead camp. I thought he ran really well, came from a long way back and stuck on quite steadily. Lossiemouth, well, enough's been written and said about her performance in the mares race, but she quickened up really well off a sluggish pace. They went a dawdle in the first circuit and she lengthened really well. She went quicker by 4 or 5 seconds than Golden Ace. She went quicker by 3 seconds than Kopek de Board, William Money and Romeo Couleurs, and that was from 4 furlongs out. So her closing sectional was absolutely rapid. She hurdled very well. The one horse to come out of that race was Take No Chances, who ran really well, was compromised really with the way that the race was run, was held up at the back, did 54.35 for the closing sectional as opposed to 53.29 for Lossiemouth. She jumped really well as well, 8.9 on the jump index. I think she'll go to Aintree next, and I'd really like to be with her wherever she goes, perhaps over 2.5 on good ground. After witnessing Django Bay win a dramatic renewal of the Arkle, I didn't think that we're going to get anything of that level for the rest of the card at Cheltenham on Tuesday. Well, cue the Unibet Champion Hurdle, an astonishing victory for Golden Ace and unprecedented scenes really at Cheltenham, with Constitution Hill departing early on in the piece. Brighter days ahead, not running her race either. And of course, Stateman with a race at his mercy, dropping at the last, going long under Paul Townend and unfortunately failing to get the undercarriage down in time. And he crashed out at the last with the race, as I say, at his mercy. Golden Ace was the one to profit then for Jeremy Scott and Lorcan Williams and owner Ian Gosden, who made a pretty smart move, I think, in switching from the mares race to the Champion Hurdle, especially when you look at the Race IQ data. For the final 4 furlongs of that race, Lossiemouth was 20 to 25 lengths quicker than Golden Ace. And that just suggests that Golden Ace would have found it really difficult to resist Lossiemouth and her turn of foot. She was also slower than Kopek de Board, and she was only 1.5 seconds quicker on the overall time than the Fred Winter Juvenile as well. So it just shows you the level of that Champion Hurdle was pretty modest when the main protagonist didn't fire. Put your hands together, good winner of the Fred Winter. Thought Hot Fuss certainly emerged with plenty of credit. Not many horses were up in the van and stayed there in that race, but he managed to. It was a really good performance from him. Put Your Hands Together obviously travelled like a dream throughout the race and put it to bed well. I thought Wendrock ran an absolute blinder. Go back and watch that race with Wendrock in mind. He missed 3 out, he missed 2 out, he missed the last, and he came home strongly. I think there was some negative vibes about how he was handicapped going into that race. I think perhaps if Connections had gone out with a bit more of a positive mindset, he might have gone close. I think he would have definitely finished second if he'd jumped any of the last 3 hurdles properly. Liam Swagger was another to come from a long way back and emerged with credit. Then finally in the last race, the National Hunt Chase, great to see Haiti Couleurs justify a long-term view that he was the perfect horse for that race. And Transmission snuck into 5th as well with a couple of late fallers. He couldn't get into a rhythm at the back, and that's the problem with that race. I think sometimes you have got to get up front and see your fences, and with that big field that we had this year as well, just compromised Transmission. But he finished 5th, but at least we landed the money with Haiti Couleurs. Right, swiftly on to day 2 then. So day 2 began with the Turners. It was a 3-pronged race really in a lot of respects. The New Lion, the Yellow Clay and Final Demand. And the drawing ground I think really played to the strengths of the New Lion, who clocked a very nice speed figure in winning. And I thought he was given a beautifully executed ride as well from Harry Skelton. He was one of the fastest furlongs in the race. His come home time was very strong as well, 56.31 for the last 4 furlongs, which closely matched, I think, the Coral Cup as well, so experienced handicappers. And they went a good gallop from the outset in the Turners as well. Yellow Clay, all the money came from him. He absolutely collapsed in price, and he ran a blinder for a team that really struggled to get a winner on the board until the last race, really, of the festival. And Final Demand just looked for all the world like a 3-miler. The drying ground certainly compromised his chance. He's going to be a much better horse when he tackles fences and some proper soft ground. I like the way that he went through the race, and he just didn't have the speed of the New Lion, who I think is now between 5 and 7 to 1 for the Champion Hurdle. You can certainly see why. He's like a little cat at his hurdles. He gets in and out of them very quickly, uses himself well. He's got speed to burn. I think he's tailor-made for a Champion Hurdle. A strongly run Champion Hurdle you would think would suit him ideally. The next race, the Brown Advisory, well, we didn't even have a British runner in this, which was very disappointing. And Ballyburn was back to almost to the exclusion of every other horse in the race. But his race soon came to a halt at the 7th, that open ditch. That found him out after he'd pulled his way through the first 6 fences. And that was the end of him, really. It was to his credit that he managed to finish 4th. And I just wonder why his normal free-going front-running style was compromised by them trying to drop him in, really. I think you either stay or you don't stay. And I always remember Ruby Walsh telling me that the one way to get a horse just to drop his head and settle better was to get him out in front, so he wasn't worrying about being up the arse end of everything. So Lecky Watson was the one that certainly benefited there and wasn't fancied by many, but was put up on one or two of the preview nights, most notably Chad Yeomans of Betway, who was very sweet on his chances and told everyone that would listen that he'd win the Brown Advisory. Well done, Chad, you were on the money with that. And I like the fact that his come home time was very swift as well, almost on a par with Jazzy Matty later on in the Grand Annual. Now that owed much to the fact that they dawdled around a little bit in the Brown Advisory for the first circuit and then tried to quicken, but it was still a really good performance from Lecky Watson, who jumped pretty well in the main and put up a really good performance, quick and clear. Every other horse, bar Lecky Watson and Dancing City in that race, lost lengths jumping on the Race IQ data. And I just think that perhaps Better Days Ahead and Gorgeous Tom, they look more like 2.5 milers. A strongly run 2.5 would certainly bring them to the fore. So a little disappointing from them that they couldn't finish off, but well done to Lecky Watson. And I think that's the 7th win in the race for Willie Mullins as well. Right, on to the Coral Cup. Jimmy de Seuil, who I was pretty positive about going into the Coral Cup, and he managed to deliver as well. The supposed second string of the Willie Mullins camp, as Bunting went off a short price favourite with Paul Townend on board. A good effort from Jimmy de Seuil. Impostoir was second, again posted a really fine effort in handicap company, jumped beautifully, 8.7 on the Race IQ data as opposed to the winner, 8.6. I thought there was other honourable mentions as well from Ballyadam, who lost a length on the lengths gain stats and only jumped at 7.4. And Beckett Rock, a horse that I put up at 40 to 1 after he'd finished second on his prep for this race. He didn't gain any lengths jumping either and only clocked 7.3. And he's quite a long way back. He'd met a bit of trouble in running, finished 6th, and that was a good performance from him. I'm quite taken with that. I'll be interested if he goes to Aintree or Punchestown. I think there's a bit more to come from him. Just didn't think he got the run of the race. On to the Champion Chase then. More dramatic scenes as John Bon belted one and certainly compromised his chance quite markedly with that error at the back straight. Marine Nationale was the one to take advantage, a horse we were very sweet on for the Champion Chase. He really did capitalise on John Bon's frailty around Cheltenham, and also Quilixios coming down at the last, which was unfortunate. But he jumped pretty well in the main and clocked a good circuit time, as you'd imagine. They went a really good gallop for the first circuit there, and that played to Marine Nationale's strength, the way that he travels through a race. The drying ground helped him as well, and he was well on top at the line. The Grand Annual went to Jazzy Matty, who became the second horse on the afternoon, ridden by Michael O'Sullivan to victory in the festival a couple of years ago, and he scored in really good fashion, came home strongly. The horse I was quite sweet on was my mate Mozzie, who did his normal thing, travelled brilliantly through the race and then just hadn't got the zip to go with them after the last. I think the Red Rum Chase at Aintree will suit him a great deal better. Good ground, flat track, strong pace. I think that'd be ideal for my mate Mozzie. I was well taken with his performance. And Midnight It Is, the other Cromwell horse, I think he was a bit unlucky not to finish closer to the two main protagonists. On to the last then, Bambino Fever, an anti-post selection for this race, the sole selection in the bumper. And wasn't she fabulous, Jodie Townend aboard Bambino Fever, quickened up really well in the straight to win in very tidy fashion. Did well, I think, to overcome a sluggish gallop. El Kairos, really good performance from him as well, a bit unlucky, got bumped in the straight under David Maxwell. He looks a smashing horse to go novice hurdling with next year. And that was day 2, done and dusted. So the new course was the scene of day 3, but of course we had the same issues as day 2 and day 1, full starts, and jockeys and starter not in sync, and that was a problem for Maureen. And she whipped round at the start and lost 100 yards, and her chance was gone pretty immediately. That wouldn't have concerned Keith Donoghue and Gavin Cromwell, though, as 6.5 sauntered to the lead and looked to have put the race to bed, jumping the last, but unfortunately she got worn down late on by Air of Entitlement, denying us a winning bet on the pod, and Air of Entitlement giving Rachel Blackmore a 17th winner at the Cheltenham Festival. Some performance that, and a good performance as well from Henry de Bromhead's mare, who came home in 54.33. Now, Just looking at Bob Ollinger's time and the time that he came home for the last 4 furlongs, 54.29. So air entitlement, admittedly over a mile shorter, but showing that turn of foot, that speed, really good effort from her. And going forward, she looks a mare to really keep on side, as does 6.5. I was very taken with her. They stretch readily clear of Diva Luna and look horses definitely to keep on side. 2 from the backwash, Galileo Dame and Matcaina. Neither of them jumped well enough, but really ran well. Galileo Dame, obviously a 4-year-old in a big field. I think she just got lost a little bit, and I think she jump indexed at 6.5 out of 10, obviously that metric. Metcaina was 6.2 out of 10. So just to show that those horses didn't really jump with any great fluidity or alacrity. But I think in smaller fields at a lesser lofty level, they can certainly find races in the spring. Onto the novice handicap chase then, Caldwell Potter, a grey in John Hales' colours, making all under Harry Cobden. Beautifully timed run from Harry Cobden, but what a shape this horse makes at his fences. His feet seem fine. They have been a bit of an issue for much of the season for Paul Nicholls, who's been pulling his hair out, trying to keep him sound. And for such an expensive horse, he's been very high profile. And the sort of the brickbats and critics were out, and then the naysayers were trying to knock Caldwell Potter, but the money came for him, and he didn't half make a good job of making all here. Zip round Cheltenham, as horses often do on this new course, get out and away, and he jumped like Mayertown on the first day, really attacked every fence, and was just beautifully economic and fluid at his fences. I was very, very taken with him. Nürburgring emerged with a bit of credit, as did the other Mozzie, who was one of the few horses to come from off the pace and run well there. It was certainly a race where you needed to be up in the van, and the other Mozzie ran really well. Onto the Pertemps then, Doddy the Great wearing the tongue tie for the first time. Didn't clock great figures, and this race often does fail to produce a really strong speed figure. Jericho de Ropponais looked like he was going to win and got beat by his stablemate. I thought the one horse to emerge with a bit of credit was the horse I was quite sweet on, was Feet of a Dancer, who was given quite a lot to do despite a sluggish gallop, and I could sort of understand the way a rider rode it, because she got to the front at Leopardstown just a little bit too quickly, and here they tried to employ the patient tactics. She was only beaten 4 lengths. She came home strongly. I thought it was a really good effort for her. I think she can find another race soon. She seems to be clearly in very good heart at the moment, and she coped with the rigours of that race very well. Obviously, the Ryanair chase was won in sparkling fashion by Factor File. Real strong early pace paid absolute dividends for him. It was perfect. You couldn't get a better scenario for Mark Walsh, who all of his 4 winners all week, all registered very good jump index stats. And Factor File was no exception. 8.8 on that metric just shows you what a good horseman Mark Walsh is, and the fact that all 4 of his winners all jumped beautifully in their different disciplines. He just had a brilliant week, Mark Walsh, and got this judged perfectly. I thought Jungle Boogie was going to just get in his way a little bit at times, but he managed to navigate around that rival and came home very strongly. Factor File, good performance, really strong overall figure, 80 on our speed figures, the ones that we keep, and he really did perform to the capacity that we thought he was capable of. Bob Ollinger, well, 1-2 for Rob Corr, an 18th festival win for Rachel Blackmore. I was with the Wall Park and Lucky Place. Lucky Place disappointed. The Wall Park ran all right. I just wonder whether he wants a bit of headgear just to help concentrate him and stop that mid-race malaise. He's one of those typical old-fashioned stayers, but the trouble is they don't go quick enough in this race. Although Gowell Road looked as though he was going a good gallop, the overall speed figure was really modest. And they must have taken a pause at some stage in this race, because the come-home times were very much synonymous with the 2.5 milers. And that was like 54.29 that Bob Ollinger finished in. So he really did rattle home, which means that they just haven't gone a true gallop throughout. I think that suits the fact that Bob Ollinger's a 2.5 miler, Tuipu's a 2.5 miler, and the 3 milers, like the Wall Park, they just look very one-paced when there's a slow gallop. Jaguar, well, he looks a 3 miler in waiting, doesn't he? He won the plate over 2.5. He beat the company sergeant. It was really well backed. Weren't great stats to come out of this race, other than Jordan's, who lost 7.7 lengths on his field and only clocked a race IQ jump index of 6.6. He did really well to finish where he did. And I think this education, or this this run won't be lost on him. I think he'll learn from this and hopefully move forward. And the final race was won by Daily Present. I really fancied Midnight Alfred, but he ran really flat. It was certainly a case of a poor selection from me there, but Daily Present managed to step up on his 5th in the race the year before. He was too keen, and I'd like the run of Summer Jest, who, perhaps ridden with a little bit more patience, could be a type of horse that could go into something like the Irish Grand National. Right, on to the final day then, another dramatic one at Cheltenham. Day 4 at Cheltenham then, what a day, what a start. 100-to-1 winner of the Triumph Hurdle in Poneros. Quite extraordinary really, and I don't like making excuses for selections, but as you well know, I was very firmly in the camp of East India Doc, who was beaten fair and square in 3rd, but the speed figure for the race was absolutely astonishing. Really, really good figure, and it just goes to show you, running a maiden horse in a Triumph Hurdle is something that only Willie Mullins could possibly do, and he managed to pull it off with John Joe O'Neill riding this Poneros. And his come home time, 53.68 for the last 4 furlongs. Look at the others. Cargess, 54.99. So he's come home quicker than the County Hurdle. He's come home quicker than Woodoo in the last race. And this is an inexperienced horse who was the 2nd worst Race IQ Jump Index rating in the race. 6.0. He lost a length at his hurdles throughout, as horses like Lulamba, East India Doc gain lengths and jump beautifully. This horse jumped really poorly, yet still won at 100-to-1. I'm not too disappointed with East India Doc. He jumped the last 1.5 too clear. He just couldn't put the race to bed. He was vulnerable late on as Lulamba came past him, and then Poneros picked both of their pockets. It was an astonishing race to watch. I think there's a couple of performances in behind that were very commendable. Place de la Nation, I was quite taken with her. 8.3 on the jump index from her, and Too Bossy for Us, who was, well, out with the washing really at one point and stayed on quite nicely under Harry Cobden to finish 7th. That was quite a taking performance. Right, onto the County Hurdle then. This went the way of Cargess. I think that's the 10th time in 11 runnings of the County Hurdle that it's either gone to Willie Mullins or Dan Skelton, and Cargess tanked all the way through the race. Hit a top speed of 37.22 as well, so she was really trapping, but she came home slower than Poneros, so that just shows you what a good performance that was in the opening race. I thought there were a couple of performances that really caught my eye in behind. I thought Ethical Diamond was sort of last at the top of the hill and rattled home to finish 4th. I think there's certainly a big day in him. And Daddy Longlegs over 2.5 miles, I think he'd be very interesting. He missed 2 out, but stayed on quite strongly, and I think whether he'd be a horse for a Coral Cup next year, but there should be an interim handicap for him over 2.5 that he managed to pick up. The Mare's Chase went the way of Dino Blue. She finished strongly in 54.64, and just make a note of that, 54.64 for the final 4 furlongs for Dino Blue. She won well. Allegory Devassi jumped right and sadly came down at the last, but it was a really good effort from her up to that point. And then we went to the Albert Bartlett. I was very sweet on Jet Blue here, and unfortunately he ran no race, so hands up, that was a poor decision from me to go for him, but a good decision from Paul Townend to go for Jasmine DeVoe, who obviously jumped fewer hurdles in the last sort of mile of this race, and that suited him ideally. 5.1 on the Race IQ Jump Index. Absolutely shocking, probably the worst of the week, and yet he still won very comfortably. A masterstroke really from Willie Mullins, stepping him up to 3 miles, last year's bumper winner. I thought Derry Hassan Paddy ran a blinder. He's a 3-mile chaser in waiting. Wendigo nearly came down and unseated Gavin Sheehan. I thought that was a really good effort from him. And the Big Western, I just wonder whether her rider would have just come outside turning for home instead of going back inside. It got very tight. There was a real schmozzle, as we like to say, on the inside there. And I wonder whether that just caught her out a little bit. But she ran an absolute blinder. Onto the Gold Cup then. And I don't know about you, but I never really felt that Galopin Des Champs was totally happy on that ground. Even just from his position on the track, he didn't jump particularly well. If you watch the race back, you can really get more of a sense of it than perhaps you did at the time. Not wishing to after time. I certainly didn't lay him in running either, so I didn't know that much. But it was a really strange performance from him, really. I just wonder whether he was a little bit of a crab on the ground. And that certainly wasn't the case with I Know the Way You're Thinking, who absolutely zipped up the running to deny Galopin Des Champs his moment in history and winning really good style. Now 54.28 he came home in. 54.28 compared to Dino Blue 54.64 and Wonderwall 56.53. So he's absolutely flown home, I know the way you're thinking. Off the back of strong fractions, off the back of a strong pace throughout. I thought it was an incredible performance, really, to come up the running like he did, and just shows you the data. You know, that 4-out figure was just astonishing. We saw Wonderwall win the Fox Hunters. Really good effort from him. He'd been a classy horse in his formative years. I think he even ran in the Cheltenham bumper, didn't he? Or he was certainly a very good bumper horse. Good performance from Rob James in the saddle as well. And the final race went the way of Gordon Elliott. And it took him a long time to get there as well with Woodoo, who really did bolt up. I thought there was a suicidal pace up front. Nurse Susan, you know, cut out a really strong gallop. The first 6 home were all hold-up horses. 9 out of the first 10 home were hold-up horses. The one that wasn't was East India Express, who I thought ran an absolute blinder for a horse that was ridden handy. Good efforts as well from Active Authority from off the pace. Tap on the Go, who looks a nice 2.5, 3 mile chaser in the waiting. So that was day 4 then. Hope you enjoyed the week. Thanks very much for your interaction on the podcast. And thanks very much for tuning in as well. We had plenty of viewers prior to Cheltenham for the tips piece, and really appreciate all of your feedback and all of your support there. I look forward to speaking to you next week. Bye for now.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.